Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good morning to all of our listeners here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Welcome to another edition of Front and Center, where we put very significant issues affecting our country, the Philippines, as our program title says, Front and Center. On behalf of our colleague Jerome Toledo, I'm your host for today, Steph Vicente, joining you all for a 30-minute worth of talk discussing important matters with our government officials, people from the private sector, or even members of the academe. As seen through our video live streaming, you may watch and listen to Front and Center through our Facebook page. Just search Radyo Pilipinas World Service. The same goes for our YouTube channel. Meanwhile, we also have an audio live streaming thanks to the Evox PBS receiver app. You may download the said mobile application via Google Play Store if you are using an Android phone or via App Store if you are using an iPhone. Once you have entered the Evox PBS receiver app, just find the logo of Radyo Pilipinas World Service in order for you to be able to listen live to our programs such as Front and Center. We are also back on shortwave radio starting just last December, as Front and Center is part of our English service, which airs from 10 o'clock to 11:30 in the morning Philippine Standard Time. You may listen to us via the following shortwave frequencies: 12.020 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.665 MHz. For today's edition of Front and Center, we are going to talk about the statement made by Department of Economy Planning and Development, or DepDev Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, wherein he said that the government will pursue measures to maintain a manageable inflation rate that supports domestic growth in the year 2026. It is noted that inflation averaged 1.7% in the year 2025, below the government's 2 to 4% target range based on data from the Philippine Statistics Authority. To have a deeper discussion on this, we will be joined via Zoom by Mr. Michael Ricafort, who is the chief economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, or RCBC, when we come back after a few reminders from the station.
Itinuloy na po natin ang zero balance billing. Libre po. Ibig sabihin, ang serbisyo sa basic accommodation sa ating mga DOH na ospital, wala nang babayaran ang pasyente.
Ang dami pong challenge, hindi po namin alam kung saan namin kukunin, ganon, nag-iisip kung paano namin mababayaran. Siyempre po, masayang-masaya, super saya po dahil na zero billing po kami. Opo, malaking malaking tulong po. Mabilis lang din po.
Bayad na ang bill ninyo. Uulitin ko, wala nang kailangan bayaran ng pasyente basta sa DOH Hospital dahil bayad na po ang bill ninyo.
Naiyak ako kasi sobrang saya. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. Hindi kami nagkamali ng taong ihinalal.
Now we're back here in the program Front and Center. As we mentioned, or as I mentioned just earlier, we will now be joined via Zoom by Mr. Michael Ricafort, who is the Chief Economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, or RCBC. This is still regarding what DepDev Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said, where he mentioned that the government will pursue measures to maintain a manageable inflation rate that supports domestic growth in the year 2026. Sir Mike, welcome again to Front and Center. This is Steph Vicente of Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Hey, Steph. Good morning and Happy New Year to you and to your viewers, and nice to be back.
Happy New Year to you as well, Sir Mike. I'll go straight to the questions. We will just now focus on the current inflation situation. As I mentioned earlier, the inflation here in the Philippines averaged 1.7% in the year 2025, below the government's target range. From an economist perspective, is inflation being this low a positive sign, or does it also carry risk for economic growth?
Well, this is inflation may be higher than expected. Expectations were like 1.4 because the previous month was 1.5. So 1.8, it's still benign. That's the bottom line. It's still considered it's still below the BSP's target of 2 to 4% range. So we can this was only well anticipated and aspired for, but now for the 10th straight month it was below 10%. So that would still warrant and would support and justify future Fed rate cuts if and when necessary. So, and at least the increase in prices is still, is still relatively manageable and benign. Yeah, realistically, when people go out and buy things and shop, prices remained, of course, relatively higher in recent years, understandably because of the yearly increase in minimum wages averaging 6 to 7% from 2022, 2023, 2024. So and up to last year, 2025. So yeah, that's why at least the pace in the growth of prices has slowed down, and yeah, it's benign, so to speak, compared to previous episodes when the increase in prices were the increase was much higher and faster. So it's still under control, so to speak, and however, because that's largely due to lower rice prices, due to the intervention measures over the past year. We have seen actually for more than a year already, the reduction in the import tariffs in rice to 15% from 35%. That's an outright 20% savings on imported rice. But upon resumption of importation starting January of 2026, that would be brought to 15%. And we have seen a ban also on imported rice since September till December. So that was also a factor for the pickup in inflation. Yeah, because that is really meant to support our farmers because of because when imported rice came last year, so the farm gate price of palay went down to below 10 pesos. So per kilogram. Now it has the farm gate prices have recovered higher. So that is really meant to support the farmers during the harvest season. And there's a window to import again January, but the import ban on rice would again resume from February to April. And yeah, and at least it's farmers should their income should be also be considered. That's why these measures were kind of this all these measures to it started with the lowering of the price of imported rice, but at the same time it's a balancing act at the same time that farmers should earn decently and continue to plant and make money by doing so to protect their incomes. So that's part of managing food security as well, because otherwise local farmers of palay or rice could just shift to other crops if they're losing money or if they're not making enough money or income because the imported rice that competed with them and that brought down the farm gate prices. But now at least farm gate prices have recovered because of those measures and for the next harvest season, so they would be protected as well by way of because importation is just done to augment supplies whenever during lean season, but during harvest season it should not be used continuously, only sparingly, only if needed to prevent the undercutting of the farm gate price and undercutting the incomes and well-being of our local farmers. So yeah, that's number one, because rice is 9% of the total inflation basket, and the price of world rice, since the Philippines has stopped importing rice in September, world rice prices have gone down to the lowest in more than 7 years in September of 2018. So that's a welcome development. But we have to note also, other than rice, of course, December, uh, the Christmas season, there's a seasonal pickup in prices, increased demand, the Christmas bonuses, one of the highest spending by consumers and businesses. So higher demand equates to higher prices. We have seen that in recent years, but only to go down upon crossing the new year because, of course, no more holiday-related spending upon crossing the new year. So prices would normalize the Noche Buena items like those that are usually used by typical households and consumers like chicken, meat products, and even fruits. So they would tend to, well, because of the end of the festivities, so the demand would go down, so the prices would taper down. And of course, the effects also of the recent storms, not necessarily in Metro Manila, but in parts of the other parts of the country, in the Bicol region, in parts of the Visayas, especially until December. So there were storms. There was some flooding also in parts of the Visayas just a few days ago. So and even in December. So it's usually still the rainy season in some parts of the southern Philippines. So that contributed to the relatively higher vegetables. Of course, after the series of storms in the fourth quarter, there's still an after effect of higher vegetable prices because some of the storm damage reduced the supplies, it disrupted logistics, but that could be temporary because once supply chains normalize and also well, the planting season starts, give it a few weeks, a few months, the supplies would resume.
Mm-mm. And since you have mentioned the prices of rice and and other food prices, the government allocated around 297.1 billion for agriculture this year. In practical terms, how can this help stabilize food prices?
Well, definitely, it's on the productivity side. That is also very important on the productivity of agriculture. Especially, well, it's the only way to go to really increase the contribution of agriculture. Because currently, currently the contribution of agriculture is like 8% of the economy,
Mm.
whereas it employs 20% of the total, at least 20% of the total workers in the country. So there's that disconnect. So the
Mm.
only way to narrow the gap is to boost the productivity by way of increased mechanization, higher yielding seeds, using the best technologies available, like the technologies, based on global best practices, like the likes of Israel.
Mm.
Despite the lack of land, lack of water, they were able to maximize their agricultural productivity in the sense that they even export fruits to Europe, despite a lot of desert. So they use, say, greenhouses. They use higher yielding varieties. They use GMO. All the
Mm.
best technologies that's available. So that's at least the country has already tie-ups with the government of Israel in terms of also training our agricultural experts and workers. So and usually increased budget allocations should really focus on those
Mm.
infrastructure like farm to market roads, storage facilities, everything that would support bottom line, yeah, irrigation facilities and other well, and of course the use of the best technologies, including partnerships and sometimes and also through the private sector. There's a huge conglomerate already venturing into vegetable production in Central Luzon in the hope that they would become they have that consortium, that
Mm.
conglomerate has an Israeli partner to access the best technologies, to have the technology transfer here using greenhouses. So hopefully that would be replicated around the country once successful, and private sector participation, both from the private sector, local investors as well as foreign investors would definitely help, including, say, a Thai giant in the production of chickens, in the
Mm.
production of pork. So, they use the best technologies, highly automated, mechanized, in the sense that, you know, the production, say, for chicks, for piglets, they produce more of those. and they grow fast because they use the best technologies and they are very efficient and mechanized and highly automated operations. So so bottom line there, they produce more
Mm.
output, more supply at lower costs, so it's more profitable. They can sell at lower prices. Market is well supplied at also at lower prices, so it's a win-win. So there's no way to go but to use technology, and hopefully that would be replicated in the smaller farms. Well, in view of land reform
Mm.
and intervention measures may be caused to say cooperatives, if
Mm.
they're part of those cooperatives, to really scale up because sometimes it's really economies of scale.
Mm.
So these large budget allocations and support, intervention measures, yeah, that would be the offshoot of this increased budget and funding. So it would
Mm.
all facilitate that if this is all taken seriously. So that would be the bottom line. In many areas of
Mm.
agriculture, boost output at lower cost, use the best technologies. So the country has more output at lower costs, and it would also lead to countries well supplied, and it would lead to lower prices and lower inflation, and the reduced need for importation.
Hmm. Now we going to talk about government measures and policy coordination. The DepDev cited timely and targeted government interventions in keeping inflation manageable. What kinds of interventions are most effective in the Philippine setting?
Well, it's really well, of course, uh, that's why it's very important to have good governance,
Hmm.
anti-corruption, because that's like corruption is like a cancer to the country financially, and the attention of instead of well, the focus should be on how to use the best technologies that's out there, then bring it to the grassroots levels, so even to the smallest farmers, so the small scale backyard farmers. So yeah, it's really the political will first,
Mm.
because if there would be better governance standards, there'd be anti-corruption measures at the very least. There would be more funding available, less budget deficits, and of course, it's really focusing on the core
Mm.
mission of the core function of the government. These intervention measures in boosting productivity, getting the best technology that's out there, and have it be replicated in many areas around the country, many farms, many agricultural areas, and at the same time, also, yeah, in the marketplaces also, that's very important. It's a way to go because there's a need to further digitize the agricultural marketplace, meeting the
Mm.
buyers and the sellers, because everything now is online
Mm.
for e-commerce. So the buyers and sellers, they meet there. So same goes for the agricultural sector, whether big farms, small farms, they should have access to that. No, that's part of a very important intervention measures. So meaning to say, well, all the buyers, they agglomerate there, all the sellers, they meet in that marketplace. So of course it's competitive, in terms of quality, prices, just like in any other products. So it's gonna go there. That's why that's one potential good source of intervention to start,
Mm.
because yeah, why? Because it would meet effectively the demand and the supply. Well, the buyers and sellers meeting there, whether they're big buyers or big sellers, and even the smallest ones. And the challenge now is logistics, especially if they're perishable. So it's transporting it from the seller to the buyer, and of course the needed other logistics like warehousing, cold storage facilities, the
Mm.
transport, of course. So and if there's a need also to say uh, to put up processing facilities. Because sometimes the risk is if there's some shortage, say after storms, like for instance, tomatoes and many other products, like cabbages, sometimes they produce because prices are good, prices are high. But
Mm.
when many farmers plant, then suddenly there's oversupply. That's a sad reality. Suddenly they just throw their products or they sell at a loss. And there's a better way to rethink this, and that's part of the intervention measures. Actually, that's part of their job. That's why eliminate further uplifting the governance standards, preventing corruption, would definitely provide the funds and give more focus and attention to the more important things like these. No, so on productivity in terms of increasing yields, increasing output at much lower costs. So it's more profitable for the farmers to produce. They're encouraged to do so. They're happy to do so. They're making money, and the country is well supplied. And the buyers, the consumers, they get lower prices because of the boost in productivity. So everybody happy, right? Yeah, the farmers are making money. The consumers get better prices, and look at the model of Israel. They were able to even export fruits to Europe. So it's they could turn it into something more profitable, more feasible, and it's really striking many positive factors in the country, and also the marketplaces, of course. The marketplaces yeah, especially if that is leveled up also, there could be some contracts like similar to derivatives futures contracts, meaning to say there would be contract growing of agricultural products as well. Well, that's already being practiced for livestock, for poultry, some contract growing, and same goes for vegetables eventually. So to prevent the glut. So say if there's a big buyer, then there's a proposal. Of course, there are proposals by the various sellers. Once they agree with the price, with the terms, of course, it's based on competition. So the best terms would win, and they would fulfill on those agricultural contracts. That's already being practiced in developed countries. So they can plan better because what they'll produce is based on what would be the future demand agreed early on. So it's avoiding waste, it's avoiding gluts, it's avoiding, sometimes if there's excess production, they just throw it away and make it fertilizer, or maybe to level it up. Sometimes if it's really unavoidable, there's overproduction. There would be production facilities to process these agricultural products, say bottle them, can them, sell them locally, sell them in the export market. So it's really taking all these things seriously in the supply chain for agriculture. The overall productivity, production, and also on the sales, on the distribution side. So, this would all lead to better planning. If there's already early on agreement between the sellers and the buyers based on those digital marketplaces, then they could plan the production well, and also local authorities may also that would be part of their job to also forecast better, to facilitate and help the farmers, and also through the cooperatives that they belong to. So there are many possibilities that's available to really boost the productivity. Same goes for manufacturing as well, and many other industries. So because technology is one of the biggest equalizers now. It is evolving very fast, but it's very potent. Technology is very potent to really, as a game changer. Well, if education is one of the greatest equalizers, especially STEM courses, we need STEM courses here because it's dealing with the best technology, science, technology, in engineering, mathematics. So yeah, and it's a challenge and some excitement especially on the younger people, the younger generation, to be part of this great mission to contribute to the country eventually. Because right now, some of them, of course, sometimes it's inevitable. Developed countries, they need talent like those agricultural scientists. They get them, agricultural experts and other scientists of the country. Yeah, because they take it seriously. So why not also take it seriously here? So the local talent would also be attracted to contribute here locally, rather than just outright abroad. Because it's really part of good governance, taking all those things seriously.
And for my next question, I would just like to ask, how insulated is the Philippine economy from global inflation shocks compared to its regional neighbors?
Well, now in terms of insulation, it's different because Now, for the Philippines, there were non-monetary measures that were put in place to intervention measures, like the ones that I mentioned a while ago on rice. But that was addressed already, and now they try to time it better. There's GLAT and there's program importation. For instance, that's for rice.
Hmm.
So during the harvest season, the local farmers should be protected, but also at the same time, ensuring the steady and sufficient supply of palayan rice in the country and at affordable prices. And at the same time, the farmers are making money. But the thing is, there's still a gap to further improve on mechanization, the higher yielding varieties to boost output per hectare for them to bring down their production costs and for them to stay to be encouraged and profitable in doing so and providing supply into the country. And that's augmented during the lean season by importation. For
Hmm.
pork and meat products, ASF, for instance, it has cut like 20% of the output in the country. So, yeah, the non-monetary measures, this is like more than 5 years already, even before the pandemic. So, uh, trying to bring in supplies at the same time, it's a balancing act also to prevent undue dumping because some countries they have subsidies that would unduly they could unduly dump here at much lower prices and if import prices of pork and meat products are unusually lower, it would adversely affect the local producers and undercut them and it may threaten it may threaten their incomes, their profits, and they may even incur losses.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are the considerations that need to be considered when it comes to the trade. No, how would the country be insulated? So it's managing those the non-monetary measures. If there's a need to bolster supply, well and good. The mechanisms have already been in place. Even the tariffs on say on rice. The management of the import tariff rate. So they go along the volumes of imports of rice, other agricultural products, the tariff rates being used, and yeah, it's a balancing act to really insulate the country against spikes in inflation. Of course, weather is very important. Weather is
Hmm.
unpredictable, so that's also the resiliencies. The disaster preparedness, disaster preparation. There are also best practices in those the likes of Japan, Taiwan, and even because they are frequented by typhoons. So the best
Hmm.
practices that they use to better manage, well, of course, better forecasting methods. If there would be, they could plan better their planting, their harvest. To, of course, something it's exogenous when typhoon storms come. So yeah, there's a need to manage. But if it's sometimes unpredictable, there's a factor to that uh, there's a need to also some safety nets like crop insurance. So it's
Hmm.
very important to balance all of those to insulate the country from the risk of to insulate it from. But of course, world prices it's another exogenous factor,
Hmm.
geopolitical risk factors. So it's really a matter of managing. Well, it's really time also to take seriously to also having well calculated on local supplies of various agricultural products. So any importation could be timed. Well, it's not just it's not just agricultural products, but other commodity imports by the country that the country doesn't have. So the likes of oil. Sometimes we don't have wheat. Sometimes we have to import feeds like corn, soy, etc.
Hmm.
So and also utilizing the free trade agreements because there's
Hmm.
an export component to agricultural exports. The country's agricultural exports are still relatively lower, but so far in recent months they've been doing well. We have seen some resiliency.
Hmm.
Uh, we have seen some uh, the so-called diversification of export products, especially more into the export winners, agricultural export winners, where the biggest exporters of bananas,
Hmm.
uh, pineapples, mangoes, tropical fruits, tuna, coconut oil. So all of those. So the free trade agreements would, further maximizing them, given the challenges right now of higher tariffs in the US, so diversify more to affluent countries in the Middle East, in Asia,
Hmm.
and in other parts of the world. So Yeah, and that would benefit the local agricultural sector, those involved in the export sector. So it's a holistic approach actually to manage all of this in the supply chains for our local agriculture, both for the local production and for the export market.
Mm-mm. And for my last question, I know that you have another appointment after this, but I would just like to ask this before we end the interview. Do you agree with the government's assessment that inflation will remain manageable this year? Why or why not?
Yeah, it is. As long as, well, barring external shocks, and so far, it looks like for this year, the average would be a little over 3%. That is still within the PSP's target of 2 to 4% because we came from a high base because of the intervention measures. We have a relatively benign and low inflation that's below 2% for 10 straight months, the latest of which is 1.8. It could remain that way until around February. There's leeway, but mathematically, because of the normalizing base effects, hopefully better weather conditions would help compared to the series of storms last year. That would be a very important factor because the impact on rice prices, wood prices, other vegetable prices. So yeah, that would definitely help if also yeah, maybe for the rest of the year, around March to December, it would range around mostly 2 to 3% to an average of a little over 3%. So it's still benign, relatively benign. And as long as economic growth is much faster, estimated at between 5 to 6%, meaning the growth in incomes, in output is faster than the growth in prices. So yeah, it's all within it's still relatively benign, and that would still justify any possible future cut in interest rates locally to further boost, because now the policy priority is to boost economic growth. Anything that would boost economic growth and GDP growth and output, so that would be welcome, including interest rate cuts and other intervention measures to boost productivity in the various sectors, most especially agriculture, industry, services, and so on.
Mm-mm. And with that, thank you so much again, Sir Mike, for joining us here in Front and Center. Until next time, God bless and mabuhay po kayo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steph. God bless, and have a blessed New Year, everyone.
And we were just joined by Mr. Michael Ricafort, who is the Chief Economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, or RCBC. Before we end the program, I think I just read a comment from one of our listeners or viewers here in Radyo Pilipinas World Service from Sir Sean Kyle Flores. He is a frequent listener here in the program, as well as in the other programs here in our station. He said, "Good morning, Ma'am Steph. Shout out to our Kapampangan music composer and former parish priest, Crispin Nakpil Kadyang, celebrating his 65th birthday today. Thank you and God bless. Sean Kyle Flores watching from Sapang Bato, Angeles City, Pampanga." Thank you so much, Sir Sean Kyle, for always listening and watching our programs here in Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And at this point, we'll be ending today's edition of Front and Center. We would like to thank first our technical team composed of Milo Jonella, Susan Aison, Hiro Lucero, and Justin Osias. We would also like to thank, of course, our resource person for today's episode, Mr. Michael Ricafort, who is the Chief Economist of the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation. And thank you as well to our station manager, Mr. Ray Sampang. Stay tuned here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service for more updates, and as mentioned earlier, we're now back on shortwave radio. Front and Center is part of our English service, which airs from 10 o'clock to 11:30 in the morning. That's Philippine Standard Time. You may listen to us via the following shortwave frequencies: 12.020 megahertz, 15.640 megahertz, and 17.665 megahertz. Until the next episode of our program, on behalf of our colleague Jerome Toledo, this has been your host for today, Steph Vicente. Good day and stay safe, everyone.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.